Hey guys, welcome to Haggai.
That's
Hey guys, welcome to Haggai.
Hey guys. This is our final week in the book. Finally done.
Finally, 4 weeks.
It's
It's a
too much
short
for
one.
this short book.
Really? I thought it was good. I enjoyed Haggai.
It's fine.
Haggai.
I honestly feel like the first 2 weeks were great, and then last week was, I don't know, and then this week,
Well-
I'm not sure what's happening.
Last week, you were in a coma.
I was.
You
Yeah.
realize-
I was.
Yeah, last week was fine. I mean, it kind of helps that I spoke, so I had to kind of find ways to like it.
I liked last week. It was so much
Yeah.
about
We
the
had a
three of
good
us
conversation.
podcast.
Yeah.
I thought we had a really good conversation about it, and it was so we talked about
Our
what
viewership
people
was way up.
expected.
It's,
What?
That should be every week.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm trying to talk about Haggai. We talked about what we thought was going to happen, and then what was, and how that impacts us.
Yeah. so the 4 weeks. The 4 weeks, just to remind
Yeah.
our viewers.
It's Scott's turn. Go ahead.
Leave a comment down below. So, week number 1, we gave space for the initial. The prophet comes and says, some of you're saying that it's not time to rebuild the temple. You're working on your houses. You're not working on the temple. It's in ruins. And it says, give careful thought to your ways, right? So we gave space for that. The next week, they leaped into action, and so we gave space to this. The backstory from Ezra we see leading to this moment is that they did start rebuilding the temple. They were sent there to do it, and they didn't accept the help of the Samaritans. The Samaritans made it their job to stop them, and they stopped. And so this wasn't like a moment of we had never thought about rebuilding the temple. They started, and then they stopped for 18 years, which is a lifetime. But they leaped into action, and so we gave space to considering where are we sitting on the bench? What have we drifted from? And then last week, the third element of the story is that God makes a declaration that He's going to help. He says, work and be strong, be blessed. And so we gave space to how does God want to help us? Today we are bringing into this. Everybody's waiting for the drum roll. What are we talking about? No, today is to bring what we really do really does matter. And it's that action matters. But to bring it even to more complexity, it's the heart behind your action that really matters. And because a 101 simple is to go, you need to be better at what you do in all types of areas of life. And God's call is not just you need to do more, do it better, but have a pure heart in living it and doing it out.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think we like to be able to compare or judge the people around us. But
Well, some of us do.
This is really one of those moments
Not
of
me.
I'm just kidding. I would never be like them. But it's this invitation to realize that the only person that can really know if you're nailing this or not is you and God.
I heard something recently where it was like, you want to judge other people, but you want to judge other people in the middle of the chapter. Like, the chapter's not even done yet, and here you are judging people, and it's not even your book to judge people. So why are you doing it? Like, it's just really interesting. Because what Greg said is true. It's between you and God.
There are two gospel moments that really point out the complexity of it that I really like a lot. And the first one is the story of the widow's mite, and it's kind of such an awkward scenario of Jesus watching people putting their offerings into the temple treasury. May not have been that. It's a little awkward. And then there is the group of rich people. It says rich people that were putting in huge offerings. I kind of visualize them, writing out the check and go, how do you spell thousands again? Like it just was, or twirling or making a declaration. Mine doesn't fit in the offering box slot or whatever. And then a widow, it says very specifically, it says a poor widow comes and she has 2 small copper coins, which were collectively, they were 1% of a day's wages, which is not much. But I hadn't really given it much thought, is that she puts these 2 in there, which there was opportunity to just give one of them. And so, because half of nothing is still nothing. So may as well just give half of it. But and Jesus, like in the midst of this, he goes, I don't know, he brings attention to it, which is again pretty awkward.
Yeah.
And he says, this woman has really, really given. What she has given is what's really, really valuable. And so that one, you just go, she did show up and she did give. And it was her heart. She could have said, I have this pure heart and not show up. And so there was this mixing of the do and the be, or the be and the do. And then another one is a parable, is that Jesus was talking or seeing people's self-righteousness. And he shares the parable of a Pharisee and a tax collector in the temple. And the Pharisee is building his righteousness on the shoulders of other people's unrighteousness. Aren't you glad that I'm not like them? Which unfortunately is very easy. It's gross how that can come out of anyone, me or us. It's to go, at least I'm not. And the tax collector was beating his chest, God have mercy on me. And again, they both showed up to the temple to pray, to have connection with God, but their heart became on display really, really quickly. The Pharisee's heart being displayed that, God, aren't you so privileged to have me? And then the tax collector to be going, God, please, if you could, it's amazing that you do love me, have mercy on me. And so both of these narratives in the Gospels show action. They're both doing the same action. Giving offerings, going to the temple to pray. Both are doing the actions. The actions do matter. It's not a matter of removing the actions, but the heart does matter too. Mm-hmm. The widow shows her heart, and the tax collector shows his heart. And so action and heart matter, which is beautiful and the worst.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, and it shows up, I think, a lot in our modern world is when people consider pursuing Christ. A lot of the old way of it is you need Christ to be a good person. And I think that's been tested enough that people go, oh, you don't need relationship with God to be a good person, because you can do all the good things. And certainly with charities and things, the numbers are shifting from the church doing the majority of the charity work in the world to we're still there, but it's moving more towards there are a lot of non-religious organizations that are doing a lot of good in the world. And so you can do all the same things, or you can do the right things, you can do good, be good. Mm-hmm. But there's certainly more behind it than just doing the right things or doing good things.
Which, walking up to this, I wrote some things about how some things are really hard to explain and are still really important. And this is right in that. And I think that opening our mouths and verbalizing the complexity of, I don't need God to do good things. Well, then what do I need God for? Is it's so easy to just go, we've got to jump headfirst into those things. And I think can be church. This isn't church culture in a derogatory way, but sometimes church culture can just have so many implicit, we all know this, right? And then never talk about it. And so it puts it on display.
And this passage too kind of teases out the next level of thinking is well, if I don't need God to be good, then maybe the reason for God is because I get good things out of it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those other things that's been tested and where people and various ways of living have found that I can get the same benefits without following Christ. In fact, sometimes it's easier. But yeah, it's one of those things that's just self-sacrifice and that calling to it and calling to community that can be done by anyone. The heart behind it and the end focus definitely gets drawn out a lot in this.
I think in sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say in Haggai, we get to the scripture where it talks about being consecrated or being defiled. And basically they're telling the people that they've been defiled. But when I look at the story, they were called, they wanted to come and build the temple. They started building the temple. And then outside things happen, which always does, right? But they were forced to stop. And I look at the story and I think, it makes sense to me why they stopped. Of course they stopped. They were forced by not just their neighbors, but by the king. And so it was to keep going would have been dangerous and would have felt it would have been felt like an uphill battle. And so like I get why they stopped, and I get why it took a while. Like they needed a prophet to come and say, okay, it's time to bring this back. It's time to start this again. And I get why, like, and like even when like they're, you know, the whole thing with holes in their purses and them not being blessed, but they're still able to build their houses. So it's like this confusing thing. Like, did they not have enough, or did they just not see that they had what they needed? And so, and like, I think we see over and over again that they weren't being blessed. I mean, it says that, but it's like all these things are happening, and I get it. Like, I get why they weren't doing that. And so then all of a sudden, like they're defiled, and like they've been, you know, like just it feels like they're being not put to task, but like, okay, you need to come back and do this. And it just makes me, like, we were talking about it a little bit, and it's like, we're all defiled, you know, like we're all in this space of, like, it wasn't them not being, I mean, they weren't being perfect, but it's also, I don't know, like, it's also more than just them being imperfect people. Like, I feel like we're all in this space, and it's like, how are we consecrated? How are we holy? And it isn't about them. It's about so much about what Jesus has done in us.
Yeah, and I don't think it's even a call to perfection, though there is a level of, like, God intentionally sets a high standard in the Old Testament of how things are supposed to be done. But they knew what they were supposed to do. They weren't doing that, but they kind of they had some sort of sense that they needed to do something. And so they did what was good enough.
Right. They were building their homes, and they were building, because like, wasn't Nehemiah at the same time building the wall? Yeah. Was it? And they're
at this point, they're still offering some sort of sacrifices.
Right.
Because Haggai has, in his conversation with the priest, kind of teases out, like, there's sacrifices happening somewhere, and the temple's not complete.
Yeah.
And so they know what they're supposed to do, but they have this sense of guilt or whatever's drawing them to do what is good enough, and that's what they're offering God. I don't think that God's looking for perfection.
That goes back to Scott sharing about the Pharisee and the tax collector. Right now they're essentially being the Pharisee in that story. They're like, I'm doing all the things that I feel like I'm supposed to do, or that I'm able to do. I'm doing my best, and God's like, no, like, actually, the tax collector or this widow who doesn't have much is actually they're doing their best.
Yeah. One thing, which I haven't written anything down about this because it's just really coming out now in this, is that you really see this as a call to really leap into action. And the book starts with a declaration. You've been going to harvest, and there's been half the amount that you expected. Gone to pour your cereal, and it ran out before your bowl was full. You know, it's like that declaration. And then at the end of this short book, it says the same thing. And if there would be any reason to, cut back, and what can we not do right now because things aren't really being fruitful or productive. This is like, this is modern context as well. It's like, in a hard time, when you're over busy, whatever it is, it's so easy for me to cut, the spiritual things. It's easy. Like the Sunday school answer is, when you're busy, is it easy to not pray? Yes. Is it easy to not read your Bible? But beyond that, it's like to be generous, to be caring, to have compassion, to listen, to be Christ-like, to have the fruit of the Spirit. Those things are really easy to cut when you feel like the margins are thin. And so here in the midst of this, what you do really matters. Being really, really matters. At the end of you've noticed that you're not getting what you expect. Then there's this declaration, all right, you're going to be blessed. I am going to provide, which can lead to absolutely nothing. Like, okay, good, I will build bigger barns. But I think the call to move forward, to actually to be and to do, takes a huge leap of faith that God is going to provide. And they were sitting at the precipice of that, and they could have heard this and done nothing, or they could hear this and they could leap into action. That's kind of the beauty of the story not being finished, even here, is that we're left with that unfinished story. Maybe you've noticed that things are challenging or hard. Well, I'm telling you, go forward anyway. I will bless you in the seen and unseen. Ready, go. And then God steps back. What you do really matters. Your heart really matters. What are you going to do? And I think it's very easy to do nothing.
Yeah, I think it's not. I think like for me, it's easier when I feel like it's easy to live in a way where to not do anything when you're like, well, I hope God does something.
Mm-hmm.
But my process over the last few years is not. Faith isn't hoping that God will do something. Faith is the realization that God's already doing something.
Yeah.
Yep. And so for me, shifting that perspective from like, well, as soon as God does something, then I'll join. Versus it's my job to discover where God's at work and to participate in it. And that is much more, requires much more action on my behalf.
Yeah, I think the normal may not be the right word, but a natural context is to go, God, if you do these things for a while, where I can be really confident in it.
Prove yourself to me.
Yeah, and bringing it to as we are.
I think that's what they're doing though. They're like, yeah, we'll rebuild the temple when God makes it easy.
Yeah,
rather than God's at work doing His part to rebuild the temple. I just have to do my part.
Yeah. I think us in the corner church world, church planting world, all of us in all of our communities, it would be so easy to go, the church not being a space, but us as people, we'd say, well, when these things come together, then, we're going to make a huge impact in our city, like whatever these things even mean. And I think that this is a moment where, maybe you've looked around and you go, well, it seems like we don't have what we hoped for or expected. It's hard. Things are hard. And God is going, let's go. I'll take care of you. And again, my guttural can be, sure. Show up for a while, God. Show up for a while. Then it's like the cultural math says the thing that really leads to momentum is momentum. The thing that really leads to impact is already impact. The thing that is healthy comes out of health. And here's a declaration that says, no, go. It doesn't matter what's under your feet, go.
A couple thoughts together too is this idea that God's already doing something and not waiting in the action and all of that it's like our desire. And I feel like I hear it so much in church. It's like, oh, like the microwave generation. We just want it now. I think they wanted it now. Looking back, it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, and then shortly after this, there's the 400 years of silence and that good reminder that God was working throughout that whole time. He was working through this time, that He had a bigger goal, that He was building to something, and He sees the things that need to line up. I know we talked about this last podcast, was like there's so many things that needed to line up in my life that for God to do what He wanted to do in my life, but I know that in the grander scheme that God does that. Like downtown, getting ready to launch. I mean, it's already doing preview services. How cool is that? But like getting ready to launch in February, and that's awesome. How many things did God need to line up before that? And how many things, like, because Corner's so hungry to chase after what God's doing in the city and in walkable distance of people, that we're always pursuing opportunities. And how many of those opportunities like fall apart every year before something lines up that's crazy, only God could make it happen. And so just seeing that, like, in this, there's promise to Zerubbabel. That's like, yes, it's in that moment, God's saying He's going to make the governor like a signet ring, and that really just building to something even bigger later, which is that the promise of the Messiah, the promise of true freedom. And I think in our own lives, it's not even just the microwave moments. It's the reminder that everything that happens can build into something, even the things that fall apart.
Yeah. Well,
especially
Zerubbabel is a great example. Is that he's the one from King Cyrus that said, "Go back," and he went back, and like we said, it didn't go really well. It's now like approaching 20 years later, and if anything, you would go, "Good job, buddy." Wow, 20 years. Yeah, look how far you've gotten. Like me I feel Bundy about it. It's
Bundy about it?
Yeah, but it's like there's an emotion in this, because, here we are 20 years into the corner church world, and you go, where are you at? What are you doing? It's very easy to defame the work that has been that has been happening. I don't think God, looking at Zerubbabel and giving him the signet ring, was saying, failure to this point, failure to this point. He wasn't saying that.
No.
He was, it was part of the process. Now continuing the process. And I keep thinking about, this is the cliche uptown person, is people that are like waiting for the next step. Like, where the doorway to Minneapolis is uptown. Like, getting here and while I'm figuring things out, where do I land? And so, like, the heart of this message to people that are landing and trying to figure things out is that this moment, the next moment, really, really, it's the opportunities at hand.
I think a lot of times when like you're talking about, God said, get moving. I will bless this. And what's happening is that God's, we're here. God's already out here.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the rest of the freeway built. He's just waiting for us to build that on ramp. And once we hit that, then boom, and then that happens over and over again. So he's already. It's like crash team racing is the best thing. The best example. You've got those little pads, and you zoom, and God's saying, get to that pad, and that pad's waiting for you, but I can't see it. It's around the next corner, and then you hit that pad,
Sort of thing.
I don't know.
Crash team racing.
Crash Team Racing.
I have no
Crash
idea.
Bandicoot.
It's been around since PS2. It's freaking awesome.
I just have to point out that the non-esports person, in fact, the oldest person in this room, is the one who's bringing up the video game analogy.
I can kick anyone's butt at Stewart Speedway on Crash Team Racing. But anyone. But yeah, it's those pads.
To bring that into the circle of it is that, coming onto the on-ramp, you can quickly go, sure, I'm getting onto the on-ramp, but God, have you seen who I am? And I just go back to that gospel moment where Jesus goes, remember the widows? She got on the on-ramp, and what was beautiful was not that she had a lot to offer, but that what she offered was, and the purity of her heart was going, all right, God, I'll step forward. And then the same thing of the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The tax collector wasn't a moment of like, I mean it this time, I'll clean it up. It was a matter of truly just a moment of true understanding where I'm at. And then from that, Jesus goes, you realize where you're at, that's on-ramp. Here we go. And so when you think about people that are trying to, it's not just uptown, everywhere, trying to figure out life, where the on-ramp is and all that stuff, it's so like a preface can be, and this is where Haggai comes to the picture, is like, you guys want to rebuild the temple? Wow, you're not ready to rebuild the temple. You're not ready. That isn't the story. The story is, it's been hard, go. And that is like, that's gold compared to, if you're going to rebuild the temple, you got to figure this out. You got to get these things better. You got to have more money. You got to have resources. God is going, I got silver and gold, and I'm the blesser, and all these different things. And I think about in the macro, we can say as a body of Christ is that we got to get some things figured out so that we can move forward. And as an individual, as a part of the body of Christ, you can say, before I can be a valuable part here, I got to get some things figured out. And Jesus is going, oh, no, now.
Yeah, to us, it looks like ready, fire, aim.
Yeah.
But God's already got, he's way beyond that. So, what we look at is we're not ready. We got, he's like, just do it.
Yeah.
And we're going, but it's not the right order. It's like, no, I'm past that.
Yep. So part of our conversation in this is to talk about identity. And this is a core of identity, is that my identity is not quite good enough. It can feel like insecurity, or can feel kind of, Eeyore-ish, but it's just part of cultural math. No, I'm not ready. And God's math is...
He's already waiting. He's been ready.
Yeah, he's the Smash Brother.
This is not going where you think it's
God's the Smash Brother.
That's the wrap-up?
No, we're talking about that partnership a lot between what God does and what we are doing. And in Haggai, you mentioned it right before from this day on I'll bless you. There's a line where it's, until now, the vine and the fig tree, the pomegranate and the olive tree have not borne fruit. But from this day on I'll bless you. It's God's promise. And that reminds me, in another prophet, at the end of Habakkuk, It's the other side. It's our, like, so God's promise. And then on the other side, Habakkuk says, though the fig tree does not bud, and there's no grapes in the vines, okay, same thing. Olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food. There's no sheep in the pen, no cattle in the stalls. I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God, because He is my strength. Like that's, and it's both sides to what we're talking about.
Good.
It's the, hey, I'm going to bless you even in this moment, and then even in this moment where I don't feel the blessing, I'm going to rely on God's strength. And I think that really ties together all this. Careful thought includes action.
Thank you.